When you buy an Oddiev custom spinner, you're buying something that Oliver has put his time, effort, and love into. It's a fully custom spinner built to all of the specifications that you feed him. And it's really an expression of what both you and him are capable of coming up with together. Whether that's something that's basic, whether that's something that's as complex as this, with all of this engraving, or something that kind of goes outside the box. This spinner design is a template for your creativity. One of the things that Oliver shared with me was that he uses every opportunity that we give him to better himself and his processes. He's taking the time to really make it perfect, and that's something that I really appreciate. So the way we're going to structure this review is we're going to go over the good, and then we're going to go over the bad. The three categories that I measure a spinner on are going to be experience, ergonomics, and quality. So we'll go through each of these and talk about what makes this spinner good and what makes it bad. So starting off with the experience, the spinner is your own creation. So you're going to design something and he's going to create his expression of whatever design you feed him. And in this case, I fed him this and he gave me this. And I fed him that and he gave me that. I really couldn't be happier overall with the end product, and it's definitely not something that's a surprise to me because every other spinner I have from him is everything that I asked for. He will not send you the spinner unless you are 100% satisfied. I have another zirconium version that you've seen in the intro. That's the first iteration of that spinner. The first one, the acid ate a little bit more material than he intended it to, and it ended up looking a little bit more like an organic type material. And instead of just saying, this is good enough and sending that to me, he took it upon himself to try to recreate it again with another piece of material. And it's zirconium, so it's not cheap. And it came out differently, but it came out a lot closer to what I expected. The second version of the spinner I sold, but that's more because I'm trying to slim my collection down nowadays, and that's one that didn't make the cut. So why did the first one make the cut? Why did the one that was imperfect make the cut? Well, there's more of a story behind that, and that's what I really treasure in a spinner. The ability to see a story that isn't just, okay, this is just another spinner. It's tied to an emotion, it's tied to a memory. And production spinners are great. They're great for affordability, they're great for getting a spinner into your hands quickly, and the quality is definitely there. But with a spinner like this is a one-of-a-kind expression, a piece of a man's life that he dedicated to creating a spinner. There are going to be imperfections. I mean, surely you can see that the etching job is, acid etching it's eating away at the material. It's going to be organic looking. But overall, the time that he takes with the spinner, it definitely shows. And that's the case with every spinner that he makes. I'm sort of rambling at this point, but it means a lot to me how much time he puts into these spinners, and it goes a long way to making his customers happy. So back to the experience. From start to finish, you're involved in the entire process. From the cutting of the blanks to the entire finishing process. There's a lot of sentimental value put into each of these spinners. It's truly an artist's interpretation of the requirements that he's given by his customers. You have to let him know when he has freedom and when he needs to be strict on the requirements that you're giving him. Now, I'm not saying to go and be an asshole about it. We definitely want to be mindful, but in a lot of senses, the customer makes the spinner what it is. Now, I realize that I've pretty much went the entire video without showing you my other versions of the spinner, so, well, let's just bring them in. So here's the one I was talking about before, the zirconium one. And there's the copper one. This was my first. When I sent him the design, I sent him just a picture I found on the internet. And he started with his base design, the floating propeller. And he created his interpretation of what I was looking for. These lines are etched. And it's just regular copper. It was actually more of like this finish, where it's a little bit more of a matte finish. It's not as glossy. I didn't really like that. I didn't really like how it felt. So I went ahead and polished it up a little bit, and it still has some good contrast. Not as much as it did when I first got it, but it's still looking really good, and I really love the patina development on it. This one is the zirconium one that I was talking about. You can see that the acid ate a little bit more material than he intended and looked like that. And he went ahead and finished it up for me and gave me a bit of a discount on it. Now this wasn't really a direction that he immediately went in. He was kind of just going to scrap the piece, and well, I didn't want to do that because, you know, it was a perfectly good chunk of metal. You just needed to find the beauty in it. And that's what he did here. There's still some imperfections, and honestly, even without the discount, I would be fully okay with paying full price for this. It's a beautiful spinner. It doesn't look perfect. It spins damn near perfect, and the warp is pretty nice on it. It's kind of what I was going for, that hypnosis type thing. And it's in a bar. Usually you see that on tries and it's done a little better, but he did a pretty damn good job, and really you're still getting a full custom spinner, and it still looks really good. The buttons from Tom perfectly complement this. So those are those two. Let's get back to this one. So on to ergonomics, the good. The design is really nice for fidgeting. It's got those curves. It's got the ends that are curved as well to help with flicking. It's got the surfaces for your fingers to grip onto when you spin it. And it's got the flats. What I also really like about the spinner, and something that I actively seek in a spinner design, is how thin it is. There's something about a really thin spinner that's really wide that really speaks to me. When you spin it, your fingers aren't getting in the way of it spinning, and it's very easy to maneuver around. It's very comfortable, and it's not clunky at all. It's based on very simple shapes, curves, flats, but it has an element of complexity to it with the way that he combines the two. Overall, it's a very comfortable design, but there are a few caveats that we'll get into. So on to the quality. The spinner is really well balanced, and it's surprising given the amount of custom work that's going into it. When you consider all the etching that's being done, it's pretty remarkable that Oliver's able to get it so well balanced. I mean, I can spin this on the end of my finger, and it's not going anywhere. It's staying right in place. When you're talking about something that's crafted versus produced, you expect a certain amount of imperfection, and there's certainly some imperfections to be had, but I actually like them. So in this case, he realized that he made a mistake when he was making the buttons. Somehow there's a chunk taken out along the perimeter of the button, and normally you're going to want perfection. For me, that only really applies to production spinners because those are kind of cranked out. It's not something that the maker is making custom for you. So for me, there's a certain amount of leeway for custom spinners because you kind of have to understand that not everything's going to be perfect. So I definitely understood, and I said, send it on over. I really didn't want to make a big deal about it because it's not really a big deal to me. If all of that wasn't enough, the finish and the etching job is near perfect. It's pretty awesome that he could crank something out that looks so close to what I gave him. Each one of these lines that he sculpts out of the metal, that takes a lot of time, and it's just amazing that he could get so close to what I was expecting. Is it a carbon copy of the design that I gave him? No. You're not going to get the same amount of precision unless you pay somebody who is a master engraver by trade. And Oliver, he's using each of these opportunities as another step in his journey to master his practice. And he's getting really good. The spinner also comes with a 1-drop, so you're going to hear little to no sound. You can hear the sound now because it's been in there for a while and I've been spinning the hell out of it. But anyways, I think that's enough about the good, so let's get to the bad. The creation of these spinners is really a journey with the maker, and each one of these is built to order. It's not mass produced. It's not ready to order as soon as you say, hey, I want one. There's a long wait, and it's totally worth it, as I said before, but custom work is something that's really in the hands of the maker. I want to make it perfectly clear before I get into the bad that none of this is a comment or a knock on Oliver. A lot of the blame for the bad is really our own fault because The design is what we make it at the end of the day, and if we go too simple or we go too intricate, we're either going to be a little disappointed or we're going to have to wait a while. I'm sure Oliver has his limits, but if he's willing to do all of this in a custom job for the same price, I'm pretty damn convinced that he's willing to do pretty much anything to a spinner, within reason, of course. With this spinner design, I actually kind of copied somebody, and I've seen a few other ones that kind of look very similar to this, and this is what I wanted. Now that I have it in my hands, I can say that I'm really happy with it, and I really couldn't ask for more. What I have is a story piece that I really like to carry. It's really fidgetable, and it's always going to be in my collection. So my point with the bad experience that I would tie to this spinner is that you really have to take charge and you have to be vocal about what you want with the spinner, because really all the shortcomings, most of the shortcomings anyways, are going to be because you didn't let him know that the spinner wasn't exactly what you wanted before he sent it. I don't feel like any of these designs I'm unhappy with, but I think that's why we see some people selling theirs. Some of the negatives when it comes to their ergonomics is that really right off the bat, some of these corners can be pretty sharp. And they're not make you bleed sharp, but you can feel that there are spots that are at least a concern for comfort. But I'm happy with it. I really love the way that everything just comes together. There's nice highlights, there's nice darkened lows. It's a very contrast-driven spinner. From the acid etching to the engraving job itself, it's really beautiful what he's done here. Another one of the gripes that I kind of have with the spinner is that the buttons are a little too small, and that's probably something that was pretty much immediately evident when you seen the spinner. Not too fond of the stock buttons that come with the spinner. They kind of remind me of torque bar buttons. They're not as bad, but they don't give you a lot to grip on when you're trying to spin it. But overall, the ergonomics of this spinner are not really something that I can knock it for, because it's not really built for ergonomics. It's built to be a canvas that you can do whatever you want with, and that's something that comes through for me. Finally, let's talk about the quality and the bad. I've kind of touched on this a little bit, but there are bound to be imperfections, and some people aren't going to be happy with them. There's, that mark on the buttons, but like I said, this is not something that I'm not happy about. I love being able to tell a story. I remember him asking me, should I redo it? And I said, no, I don't think it's worth your time, because at the end of the day, it's not really a big deal to me. I like the character that it brings to the spinner, even if it's something like an imperfection. One of the things when it does come to quality, though, that I have to admit is that the buttons have always seemed like an afterthought to me. And this is the first spinner that I've gotten from him where the buttons were actually built to match the spinner. In these spinners, they came with just generic buttons, and they were really small, and they didn't really match the material, and they didn't really match the color, but that could have just been on me. So at this point, I've touched on all the points that I have in the 3 categories, both good and bad, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Now, I really can't say enough good about this spinner. The spinners that I have from Oliver are ones that are going to stay in my collection forever, and that's really because each of them is one of a kind and they're never going to be made again. Sure, you can make another Rick and Morty spinner. Sure, you can make another hypnosis spinner. Sure, you can make another spiderweb type spinner with Oliver. It's never going to be any one of these 3. And that one-of-a-kind aspect is something that I really appreciate as a collector and as an enthusiast. And that's why they're going to stay with me at the end of the day. Until next time, this has been Spinner Talk, and I am Nate. Peace.